You're watching the Faculty of the Mace show, where faculty authority is promoted and protected in the Academy of the 21st century.
Now let's use a scenario to see how well we understand this formula. So let me give you some of the details, okay? It's the start of quarter two. Last quarter, we finished up with a head count of 100 students. So that's going to be our starting head count. At the beginning of the term, 3 students who are enrolled before don't show up, even though they're eligible to take classes. 2 students were on probation. They hoped to take classes this term, but they failed to maintain satisfactory academic progress, and they can no longer take classes. They're being forcibly dropped. In addition, another student has exhausted her federal student loans, and she's unable to secure private funding because of a low credit score, and she cannot pay further funds out of pocket. She has to drop. 2 other students have also exhausted their student loans. While they can secure private financing, they are simply unwilling to accept the interest rate, and they elect to drop. Well, we're reasonably successful in recruiting new students. We've recruited 21 new starts for this term, but on the first day of class, only 17 of those students show up. 4 are no-shows, and all attempts to contact them fail. Also, 2 new students show up during the first week, and they're prepared to start school. And 1 student shows up at the beginning of the second week, and that student is prepared to start school. In addition, we have 5 reentries, students who are coming back to school this term. During the term, however, 5 students elect to drop for various reasons, and 2 students are dropped against their will due to excessive absences in accordance with Department of Education regulations. And finally, the good news is that 23 students have successfully completed their studies, and they're ready to graduate at the end of the semester. So, what is the ending head count for this quarter, and how do we calculate it? Well, let's put that formula up on the screen. And first, we're going to look at the magic head count formula, and you can see that the ending head count at the end of quarter 2 is equal to the beginning head count at the beginning of quarter 2, and we add in the starts, and we subtract out the sum of the losses and the graduates. So let's put our specific example now up on the screen, and you can see that. And if you want, you can pause the video and look at it and work through it. But you'll see that if you do the math, you can see that at the end of quarter 2, we started with 100 students, we added 25 students, and we've taken away 31 students. So our ending head count is now 94 students. Well, generally, how did we do? Well, not very well. Why is that? Well, we have to consider Wall Street. The street doesn't like decline. What does that mean to us? Well, let's put this formula up on the screen. Whenever the ending head count is less than the beginning head count, that means we have decline, and that's what we just had in our example. We went from 100 students to 94 students. The street isn't very happy. The street doesn't like stasis either. Let's put that formula up on the screen. That's where the ending head count is equal to the beginning head count. Doesn't increase by much or decrease by much. Street doesn't like stasis. The street likes growth as long as it's not below its expectations. Let's take a look at that formula. Where the ending head count is greater than, that's what that little angle bracket means, greater than. Where the ending head count is greater than the beginning head count, that can be good. If the street likes growth, well, then it really likes rapid growth. So let's put that formula up on the screen now. And you can see the double angle bracket. Mathematically, that means is much greater than. So when the ending head count is much greater than the beginning headcount, we have rapid growth and Wall Street is happy. So, what did our results show? Well, our headcount or enrollment is down 6%. Enrollment is down, therefore revenue is down, Wall Street is unhappy, and I'm afraid management is unhappy. Well, more specifically, how did we do against our targeted performance for this term? Well, let's assume that our target growth rate is 20% per year. And if there were 4 academic quarters in a year, then roughly we expect 5% growth per quarter if we just take simple interest and neglect the effects of compounding. Well, if we started quarter 2 with 100 students for a 20% annual growth rate, then we would have to end quarter 2 with 105 students. And you can see that up on the screen. Now, we actually ended the quarter with 94 students. So, as you can see, we're 11 students short. Let's assume, just for the purposes of this discussion, that our losses and our reentries are at plan. So if we need to make up this headcount shortfall by starts alone, how many would we need? Well, we actually started 20 students. We would need another 11. Starts would have to be at 31 to give us our required growth rate. So if you allow our assumptions, then our starts are only at 65% of target. And that's not good at all. So how do we manage these issues? What do we do? And how do we manage them as educators? Well, there are only 3 things that we can manage: recruitment, retention, and reentry. And I call these the 3 R's. And let me put the definition of these 3 factors up on the screen while I read them to you. Recruitment management attempts to maximize the number of students who start or who re-enter. Retention management attempts to minimize the number of students who drop, both during a term and between terms. Reentry management attempts to maximize the number of students who return after previously dropping out. Well, I hear you saying, but wait, I'm faculty. I'm not a business manager. What do these factors have to do with me? Well, they can have everything to do with you or nothing to do with you. You see, it depends on how the 3 R factors are managed. They are not good or bad in themselves. How these 3 R factors are managed depends critically on the background and experience of your C-level management team, and in particular on your CEO. Let's look at a case study, as we have been doing, and once again, we will turn to Alta College's George Burnett is the Chief Executive Officer. We'll take a look at a pleading from a civil action in which Mr. Burnett is a defendant, and this pleading was filed in the U.S. District Court of Colorado on August 11th, 2010. We'll put an excerpt from this pleading on the screen. George Burnett is a resident of Colorado. He has been acting CEO and director of Alta Colleges since August 2006. Burnett did not hold an academic position before being tapped as CEO and director of Alta Colleges. Rather, he had a history of marketing, online, and technological business experience from his previous position as Chief Marketing Officer for Quest Communications International, a large telecommunications company. Also, we will look at a footnote from the same pleading. The restated financial statements for 2004 of Alta Colleges, Inc. and subsidiaries show that recruiting made up almost $50 million of its $157,350,000 operating expenses. The following year, the amount spent on recruiting leapt up to $71,857,000, nearly a third of its operating expenses. The Faculty of the Mace is not in the position to make any judgment on the relative merits of this case. Also, these levels of marketing spend at about 30% of gross revenues and above are not at all unusual for for-profit institutions. However, these statements are important to us as follows. It's clear that a CEO and a C-level management team with a marketing background and focus will attempt to manage the 3R processes with only or primarily a marketing approach. You know, it's the old story. If you ask an insurance agent for a solution to one of your problems, what is it? What do you get? Well, you get more insurance. This narrow approach to higher education management is not the fault of the 3R processes themselves. Rather, the question is, how are these processes managed? If they are managed with a myopic focus, as indicated by spending on marketing only, then it's the fault of the management team, not of the nature of 3R process management itself. In fact, there are many sound ways to manage the 3R processes that are entirely consistent with good educational policy, appropriate faculty authority, and local disclosure and transparency within the academy. This sound management of the 3R processes is not only consistent with the above factors, it actually depends on those factors. Our thesis is that every significant area in higher education can be effectively managed via the 3R processes. And that, my friends, is the rest of the story that we will talk about in future episodes. In episode 6, we will examine non-academic risk factor screening and answer the question, is there appropriate due diligence by schools? How do you feel about the magic headcount formula and the 3R management process discussed in this episode? Let us know by visiting facultyofthemace.com. There you will find many ways to join the community and leave your feedback. Thanks for watching. I'll see you inside the next video.
Produced at Studio C, Colorado, USA.